This one's a topic request from Hosty. I'm going to try to make it short and sweet. I'm going to try. She asked me to talk about emptiness, about finding your passion, and about forgiveness. And my experience with these things. Obviously, I don't know shit, but I'll just be honest and give my remarks about these things. Now, I will say, when you first messaged me about the emptiness, and that was the first thing, it really made me think again about my first experience with emptiness, as far as it in its most glaring form. And I lost my virginity at 17, but in that moment wasn't so empty. But moving on, like when I moved to Maryland and started trying to engage in the sexual escapades that I did, boy oh boy, did I learn what emptiness felt like. I experienced emptiness time and time again after having sex with women. Every single time, it would be great, and they let me finally have sex with them, and then I feel dead inside. I feel lifeless. And, that's how it goes with essentially most highs that lack in substance. A lot of highs that don't have any nourishment within them or surrounding it. Because when I finally had sex with the woman that I love, I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel that emptiness. But I didn't, and all these girls were great. It wasn't any of their fault. Like, I appreciate all the women that have ever let me have sex with them. Thank you. But it was just this purely superficial effort. And a lot of it had to do with, it's funny because as much as I got used to pursuing women for sport, just for sport fucking, at first, in my early 20s, when I was first doing this, when I was living in Maryland, because I'm from New Orleans originally, when I was living in Maryland, I really did want something more. I wanted a relationship. I wanted, something meaningful and substantive between me and a woman. But what happened was, I'm not going to lie, I let a lot of bad experiences influence me. A lot of the women that I was attracted to and that I pursued, it was a turnoff for them that I wanted something more. And then so I'm not saying that and that's weird, right? Because usually women want something more. But I guess, let's just say they didn't want something more with me. And I guess what it did was, just like in New Orleans, because in New Orleans I was a sweet young lad, and I didn't want to pursue women solely for sex. But what happened was, it was similar to New Orleans, where a lot of the girls I was attracted to, now I'm not saying every girl, let's say the girls that I just came in contact with, they had very much so communicated that they wanted a specific kind of guy with a specific kind of attitude, right? And so I adjusted accordingly because I want them. And I'm going to do, it's like, if you want that job, you're going to do what you have to do to get that job. If I want that woman, I'm going to do what I fucking got to do to get that woman. And so I adjusted accordingly. And that adjustment, though, it didn't take a lot of artificiality. It was natural. It was in me already, that quote unquote dog, that quote unquote sex fanatic. That was in me, but also the gentleman was in me. The sweet guy was in me, right? But what happened was I started feeding the animal more than the gentleman. And so the animal came more so to the forefront. And that became more of the natural part of me, you could say. I fed the primitive fellow within me, and who existed already, but he didn't have as much of a say. But because of what I saw, because of what I took notice of what was necessary to get women, I allowed that more primitive person to come out. And when I went to Maryland, it's funny because I thought I was going to turn over a new leaf. And I remember this one girl in particular, And I never went on a date with any girl. I didn't go on dates ever when I was in New Orleans. And I was like, all right, I'm going to try to bring the gentleman out again. I'm going to try to go on dates and shit. And it just fell flat, and it just wasn't it, man. It just didn't work. And they didn't receive it that well. And I'm sure it had a lot to do with me. Maybe I'm just, at the time in my early 20s, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't doubt at all that there was all kinds of whack shit about me. But the date shit didn't work out. I had more success when I pursued them just for the purposes of fucking. I had way more success when I was a dog, so to speak. And so I'm going to let that, and I let him come on again. But when I let the primitive guy come out again, and when I had this oodles and noodles of sex, it was empty every single fucking time. Every single time I climaxed, empty. Every single time I just couldn't be around him anymore. I didn't want I didn't want to be touched. I just wanted to get the fuck as soon as I came. And emptiness is the best way to describe it. Because it didn't feel good. It didn't feel bad. It didn't feel, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. It just felt like nothingness. It felt like lifelessness. It felt like, what the fuck? The fog had been cleared. And so, it's funny though. That emptiness that I'm talking about, that I felt repeatedly, because I kept repeating the cycle, it's similar to when you have the hangover, even though, but this is way more immediate. It's kind of like any bad thing that's highly rewarding. You're going to keep doing it because we have this amnesia element to us as human beings. It's like, no matter how much something might negatively affect you, if it has at the very least a proportionately positive effect, you're like, fuck it, I'm going to just keep doing it. And that's what addiction is. Addiction. Let's get something straight here. I say this all the time. But I listened to this podcast the other day, actually, and they're talking about sex. And it was these two girls who actually have a podcast on porn. And but they were talking with these two other guys. And so this teenager wrote to them talking about how he wonders if he has a sex addiction or not, because he said I think he's like fucking 14, and already he's watching ridiculous amounts of porn, and they were kind of being condescending a little bit, or patronizing initially, saying like, because here's the thing, I get it. They were like, oh, like he's 14 and watches a lot of porn. Oh no, you're cursed, dude. You're gonna die. Guess you're depressed because and I get that kind of that joshing them. Because when I was 14, oh my god, if I would have had the same kind of porn access, I would have been all over it. It would have been just I'm not gonna be crude. I want to say something so crass. I'm not. But like you had to work for the porn. You had to fucking download shit and go through fucking different channels and figure it out, man. And you had to a lot of times you have to just deal with still images. Porn was not accessible like it is today, so I can't even imagine having that convenient access to porn at the age of 14, if I was 14. But the girls ended up talking about how, like, they were kind of making light of it, and they were even uncertain as to whether or not you should even dare to say somebody's addicted, or how can you say someone's addicted to porn? And to me, I don't know why this is confusing anymore. It should be so simple. Everybody should get what addiction is at this point. And I'm not saying I'm really annoyed at them. I'm not genuinely. I get it. Like, this stuff I don't fucking get. I'm not truly angry. But I'm saying, man, listen. I don't give a fuck how common it is, how much people do it. It's addiction if it's hurting you. If it's hurting your health, your physical health, your mental health, your social health, if it's hurting anything in a significant way as a result of your constant pursuit of that particular form of stimulation, of that particular form of reward, if you're damaging things in your life and you just cannot stop or cannot find a way to reconfigure, because it's just such a powerful force that makes you gravitate towards that particular form of stimulation, then you are addicted. And I was addicted to sex because it was hurting me. It was like, it wasn't what, every single time I felt empty as fuck. And it was just like, what's the point? A lot of these girls, ironically, they ended up wanting more. They wanted more than just sex, some of them, eventually. At first it starts out like, you're just sex, and then they want more, understandably. A dude's entering in you, you end up liking him, you want more, you want a relationship. That makes sense. But it was hurting not only them in that sense, but it was hurting me because what was I getting from it? I was just getting this high and this validation. Also, which made it so empty. Which made it so empty is because I guess I had insecurities. It's so funny because I had simultaneously this grand sense of self, but also this inkling that I was fucking whack. And it was so funny because it has to do with that grandiose self. It's like, why can't I just get every single girl I ever want? It was dumb. It was just all immaturity. And it was my insecurity. When a girl would let me have sex with her, that was her, to me in my head, that was her way of saying, Marcus, you are everything you think you are. Even if, man, look, I could have said just 2 words to them and they let me have sex with them. They could not even really know me. But in my head, it's like, yeah, this must mean her letting me have sex with her must mean that I'm the shit. But anyway, empty feeling every single time. And emptiness sucks. But I find it very interesting that emptiness doesn't tend to rear its ugly head upon things like, let's say, having transparent, wholehearted conversations with my brother or my boy, who is basically my brother from another mother. Or me even talking to complete fucking strangers and having wholehearted, authentic, transparent conversation. Me asking them about things that matter to them. Them asking me about stuff that matters to me. And us sort of, in that moment, having this sense of oneness. This dual interest in each other. It's funny how that is a high. And that can make me feel so amazing. But that doesn't leave me feeling empty. In fact, it fills my cup. In fact, it energizes me and inspires me and motivates me. So to me, the lesson here about emptiness is that is that emptiness, is it coming from you marinating on surface level shit, on the superficial shit? Is it coming from superficial pursuits? Are you going deeper? Like, it'd be interesting if after having a wholesome conversation with somebody, we're talking about stuff that matters to us. It'd be interesting if I felt empty after that. Then we have to really have a very complex conversation. It'd be like, what's going on? But I think a lot of our emptiness comes from us not feeding the more wholesome appetites. The more, you could say, the deeper parts of ourselves. I think that's where a lot of the emptiness comes from, because you can feel not pretty, not handsome. And then someone has sex with you, which makes you, and they can even really think you're attractive, and it can make you feel more pretty, more handsome, right? But what after though? What's there? What else is there? That's where the emptiness comes in. What else? Is there anything else here? Is that right? Is that it? If you get lucky, maybe. But usually, there's nothing else. And so it makes you realize that you need to, maybe your concerns and your priorities are due to your concern with how this world sees you. And that's a very empty thing, to try to continue to please this world. 'Cause I think a lot of for real, I think that had a lot to do with the reason why I pursued the women I did so often. Here's the thing. I have a natural appetite for women. I'm attracted to women, but it got perverse. Funny enough, it got perverse. Not perverse mainly because I want to have sex with them, but perverse because it wasn't purely about I'm attracted to you, let's have fun. You're attracted to me, let's have some fun. It wasn't like that. It was more so, I need you to make me feel better about myself. I need you to make me feel I need you to do anything for me is bad. The healthiest kind of interaction is when you feel whole and at peace and you still want somebody else because you don't need them. You just want them. You just desire them in that moment. And if you have them, great. And if you don't have them, great. And that goes for sexually, conversationally, a lot of things. I think that a lot of our emptiness comes from us not being okay with ourselves. And it's hard. It is easier said than done. Way easier said than done to be okay with yourself. Just because. Because you see how good it feels. Especially if you've ever felt how good it feels for somebody to acknowledge you as a good-looking person, a well-spoken person, a smart person, some kind of awesome. It feels so good, and it reaches so deep that it's so hard for that to not be the standard. It's so hard for the standard to not be somebody needs to accept me for my existence to be valid. For my credibility as a human, I need to be accepted. I need for them to give the thumbs up. Or else, who am I? And that's not good, obviously. Even as I say it, even as I fucking say it, it's reminding me how stupid that is. It's reminding me that we cannot rely on others for our validation. That's ultimately, long story short, a lot of where my emptiness lies. I was looking for other people for my validation. And also, going deeper, I think I just wasn't happy in general. Like I just was wayward. I was aimless. I was on autopilot in a sense. I had a level of awareness, but I was looking for my fulfillment in the wrong way. In a woman's arms. That's where I was looking for my fulfillment. I was looking for them to give me a sense of fulfillment. And every single time after a climax, when it wasn't there, emptiness. So also a part of that emptiness then to me, where are you looking for your fulfillment? Is it on social media? Because that's one thing. I don't scroll through shit. I might look at people specifically whose words I value, but just scrolling through social media, that shit it fucks with me. It makes me feel empty. It makes me feel empty because you know what it is? When you give your undivided attention to something, when you're seeing people just talk out of their ass, it's almost like you're doing it. It's like your brain is reading it, and you don't read it purely as their words. It's like it becomes a part of you. The nonsense they speak and the superficiality that they champion, it's like it's rubbing off on me. And it makes me feel, it's just like, ugh. It makes me feel less and less whole, less and less stable. So I can't scroll through that shit. Now, because of my awareness, I can pull back. But so remember what I'm saying is a part of the emptiness that I had in my early 20s when I was pursuing all those women was because I didn't have the wisdom to call myself out on the fact that this shit is not healthy. I just kept rinsing and repeating. I'm actually ashamed to say that I didn't have the wherewithal to call myself out on it, to really extract myself from that behavior, to really stop it. Because I feel like now I can get caught in the momentum of unfulfilling things because it's so rewarding, despite how much it's hurting me. But eventually I can hit the brakes because I'm like, no, because I care now more than ever about a health that I have defined for myself. But in the past, it wasn't so elaborate. It wasn't that complex. It was just keep doing shit. Just in the past, it was just do what makes me feel good. Do what makes me feel good. Do what makes me feel good. And so that's part of that emptiness, right? It's more than just doing that which makes you feel good. Something that makes you feel good isn't necessarily good for you. It isn't necessarily good for you. And I know I meant to talk about more than just emptiness, but I think that whether we like it or not, as human beings, there's certain things that are going to make us happy and certain things that are not. There's certain things that are going to make us feel fulfilled and certain things that are not. Just like, let's look, eating candy feels really good. And it's not your fault that it doesn't completely nourish you. It's not anybody's fault that candy isn't enough to have you lead a healthy life. It's just what it is. It just is what it is. Excess amounts of sugar are inflammatory to your system. It just is what it is. Me wanting those women to fulfill me and me feeling empty, it just is what it is. Having transparent, wholehearted conversation, speaking to another person about things that matter to you, aspiring to grow, wanting to become better, that can make you feel fulfilled. It just is what it is. If it works, it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And it's just a very little positive fact about this human thing, that a lot of what's best for us is the wholesome shit. It's the wholesome stuff. It's the healthy stuff. It's the good-hearted kind of stuff. You know, this life's unfair. And we see a lot of sociopaths, a lot of greedy people, a lot of just bad human beings. We know that you can flourish in this world. And flourish meaning you can have financial security and have people around you that at least claim they like you and claim they love you. And you can live into old age being a complete asshole. And we see that, and then we think it's a no holds bar kind of thing, right? We be like, okay, so anything goes in this bitch. But for those of us who are a bit more grounded and less shameless and actually care about having harmony between us and our fellow man, it would seem that what helps us get away from the empty is getting closer to each other in very real ways and not in superficial ways. And it is being less greedy. It is in being more thankful. It is in eating more vegetation, getting your sleep, doing some physical activity, having moments of silence where you just appreciate. It's doing all those cliche, simple but hard things. That for me helps me get away from the empty. Emptiness for me, it does seem to arise when I'm just purely acting upon reward for reward's sake, just to feel a high. And just to feel a high, oftentimes, for very superficial reasons, in very superficial ways. I think emptiness tends to come from a lack of being grounded. And I'm talking about the psychological kind. You might feel emptiness as a result. Hey, I don't doubt at all that you could be so chemically imbalanced that, that you just, something's not right. I get that. But for a lot of us, I think it is psychological in large part. And we lack perspective. We lack appreciation. We're greedy. And we don't want to admit that we're greedy. We can't stop wanting. I agree that desire is the root of dissatisfaction. We can't stop wanting things. Then when we want something, it's not enough. Then we want more. It's always more. We can't ever sit back and just be. And I think a lot of our emptiness comes from the fact that sometimes that's what we need to do. And nothing's rewarding. Because nothing's gonna reward you. Because your body and your mind is like, I'm not interested in this shit. Just chill. Just appreciate. Just rest for a second. And sometimes then you rest too much. And sometimes the body and the mind is like, I want to work. I want pressure. I want some form of challenge. It's a complicated thing. And I think healthiness. The other part of it, I guess the other side to it. As just briefly, I'll speak to the other side to emptiness. We do eat like shit. We're unhealthy as fuck, and our gut health is all messed up. We don't have, they say that the good bacteria in our system and all that. We're not eating the vegetation. We eat too much. Sugar is a very destabilizing food. I've been indulging on sugar recently, and I see why people do it, and I remember why I used to do it so much, but it has some crazy side effects. All right, that's it. I feel like I rambled enough. I don't know if this is good. I don't know if this is bad. We'll see. All right, y'all. I talked about emptiness. I couldn't get to the other subjects. Peace.